Diane Kruger, you play Detective Sonia Cross in FX's The Bridge. She's unique from most TV detectives we see in that she suffers from Asperger's, which is a form of autism that affects social interaction, among other things. What kind of preparation did you do for that aspect of the character?
It was a little bit of a long process. First of all, I didn't really know what Asperger's was, so I bought pretty much every book and every internet site that would talk about it to understand what it was. I have to admit that even after that, I still felt like it would be very daunting to portray somebody who has Asperger's. I didn't want to be just an actor doing tics. I didn't quite understand what it was, and I feel like for me the click came when I met somebody who has Asperger's. Autism Speaks came on board, and they introduced me to this young man called Alex Plank, and he has Asperger's, and he allowed me sort of to ask him all the more intense and difficult questions.
Yeah, that seems like it must be especially uniquely challenging for an actor to try and relate to a character who herself has difficulty relating to others, and to have this resource, to have someone to be able to talk to try and understand this. Was that whole process very enlightening for you into the experiences of someone who has Asperger's?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Alex is pretty, he's learned a lot over the years, and people who don't know that he has Asperger's would maybe find him a little odd at times, but he hides it pretty well. But to be able to ask what goes on in his mind at certain instances, to work with him on the scripts and ask him how he feels about certain things, and also most importantly, being able to observe him and see him struggle sometimes and see him lose control. That was really helpful, and because he's so advanced, I was able to ask him what is going on right now in your head, like why are you finding the situation difficult, and it helped me understand, what goes on in their minds, and it could be a very random moment. They're very sensitive to smell, for example, and a smell that most people might not even notice, and to hear him explain it, it just opened up everything for me.
Now, we usually see in TV and film a lot of times autistic characters, or we see them how it affects men. And you play a woman with autism, and she's also in this very male-dominated profession, law enforcement. Do you think that has a dual impact on her feeling of alienation from other people?
Yeah, actually, it was something that I discussed with Alex as well. Supposedly, Asperger's is most often, or more often, diagnosed in boys and men, because for women, often people feel like, oh, she's just a bitch, or she's just cold. Um, they don't recognize it as much. So it was important to me, to try and understand how I could how I could show that she has Asperger's, but it doesn't define her, even though obviously it defines her life. But I wanted to be able in the show to show nuance. In the original show, Sonia's character Saga is even more black and white than what we see here. And the backlash in the beginning was pretty intense, because we never say the word Asperger's on the show. So the first couple of episodes, people were like, what's wrong with this character? Why is she so weird? Why is she so mean? And it took a while for people to warm up to her, and I think they do now, and that's been actually really rewarding to see them come to like such a seemingly unlikable character.
Do you think that helped the show in a way to not necessarily say the word, Asperger's or autism, and just to have the audience sort of gradually get to know her and sort of figure out how things work for her?
I don't know if I would call it help. There was definitely a lot of talk about whether or not we should say it out loud, and I think my showrunners were very adamant about not doing that, but it took a lot of convincing. Um, I think The Bridge is not a show for everybody. it's a show that is very challenging for audiences. It's very complex, and uh, you are definitely required to figure things out for yourself. And so I think it was the right decision, and I think it makes it more rewarding because an audience will figure it out for themselves, and then I think the pleasure of watching something without it being fed to you, for me personally, is a more interesting show to watch.
What about preparing for the law enforcement aspect of the role? Is this your first time playing a police officer?
Yes. And in a way, my least favorite part because I don't like guns and I've never really had a desire to be a cop. I'm not good with authority. um, but it's fun. The boys consistently make fun of me because I drop my gun all over the place, and my showrunners are super frustrated with me and forever send me to do gun training. But it's I don't know. It makes me laugh sometimes to imagine myself as a cop.
How did that gun training go? Did it give you a chance to sort of warm up to the idea?
Nah, yes, I mean it's fun to go to a shooting range and hit a target, um, but guns are very powerful, and I'm not a tough sort of cop-like creature, so the backlash of pulling a gun it's surprisingly strong.
Yeah, I definitely know how you feel. I've been to a couple of shooting ranges, and those are fun, but I have no interest or desire at all to actually own a gun in personal life. It just seems like a
Yeah,
bad
it
idea.
seems like a really bad idea.
Before The Bridge, you worked mostly in film. This is your first regular TV series role. What made you decide to take on series television? Was it just the right project at the right time, or is this something you'd been considering for a while?
I think it's a really exciting time for television, cable television, I should say. Um, we just don't make those kind of dramas really anymore in film. In the movies, the big studios are making big tentpole films, which are fun to watch, but for actors, and directors, I think we like to tell stories and have real character development. And so it's a very exciting time to be on television. And it's very creative and very, very rewarding, not just for actors, but directors and certainly writers.
Now, The Bridge is based on a Scandinavian series. Did you watch any of it before you had a chance to make the season one of the American version?
I did. I watched the first season. I live part time in Paris, so I was familiar with the show, and it's one of the reasons why I really wanted to be part of it. I was very inspired by the show and the actors, and I just I felt like it was a great premise, and to be able to change it, adapt it so greatly, between Sweden and Denmark to Texas and Mexico, I think it brought something very special to the American version.
Now, being familiar with the original version, did that make it more difficult to sort of view the new version that you were making as sort of its own entity and to try and distinguish yourself and separate yourself from the original?
Actually, I think it's essential for me to watch it and then try and make it my own. In fact, I felt like that the original was, like I said, Saga was very black and white, and it took me a lot longer to sort of not just like her, but to really understand her. And again, like I wasn't really interested in making a cop show, and I wanted to see more of her and her real life, not just her work life. And that's something that thankfully the writers felt the same way, and they developed a lot of other storylines for Sonia, including, for example, the story of his sister's murder, which allowed my character, it still allows my character to show emotion and to show nuance in her as a person, like we all are. We're not just black and white, and neither are people who have Asperger's.
Now, since this is your first full-time series role, was it big? Was it a big adjustment from in terms of the production from doing film work?
Yes, it's a big adjustment. Some great, some not. For example, I'm not sure I love that directors change every week. I went to drama school in France, and to us, like, a director is God, right? And it's strange for me to have to adapt to a different director every week, who, in a way, know less about my character or the show than we do because we're there every day. So that's been a big adjustment. And also the urgency, things change so quickly when you prep for a movie. You have all this time beforehand. You talk about your character, you talk about, what goes on. On a TV show, while you're shooting one episode, you get the next script, and so you have to read it that night, you have to make changes to it that night. Everything is very immediate, and it can be exhausting to sort of mentally be in different episodes all the time.
It's definitely interesting that you mentioned the difference in the role of the director. It does seem that in film, very much, the director is the auteur, and in television, a lot of times it's the executive producer, the writer, who's really the creative force behind the show.
That's right. That's right. And that's great in some instances, and then in others, I wish my director had more of a point of view. Um, but it's been interesting. It's a very rewarding experience because at the same time, creatively, I'm much more engaged because I'm the lead of the show, so whatever notes I have usually get addressed, or you're just more part of the creative process than you are on a film.
And setting is a very important part of the storytelling. They moved this from Scandinavia to the Mexican American border, which changes so many things, not just the politics involved, but the physical landscape. How much did you film on location in Texas and Mexico?
Surprisingly little. We went 5 days for the pilot, but we shoot here in LA, which is sort of the perfect double for Mexico and El Paso. We shoot a lot in the desert, close to Santa Clarita, which looks very much like Mexico and Texas. And it's been very nice to be able to come home at night and sleep in your own bed for sure.
It does seem like Los Angeles seems to be, the perception of it at least is that it's very much, this sort of melting pot of both sides of the border, because it's so close to Mexico.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons that I think I was so intrigued by the show as well, because I do feel, concerned about it. I see, those guys standing outside of Home Depot on the corners of the streets, and it is so close that you read and hear about the problems that are happening at the borders all the time. So I think it's a show that's very much in the zeitgeist, and I hope that season 2 will even delve more into that.
So much of the show is driven by your relationship with Damian Bashir as your partner from across the border. How much can you tell us about the casting of your roles? Were you both cast at the same time, or did one or both of you test with different actors, or how was that? How did that come about?
Yeah, no, we were cast at the same time. They sent me the script saying, first choice is Demian Bashir, and he really wants to do it. So apparently they told him the same thing about me, and so we sort of immediately said yes. There was never any talk about anybody else.
Now, with the storytelling taking place on both sides of the border, did you learn much of any Spanish for this story?
I speak surprisingly little Spanish, even though my character supposedly understands most of it. I don't know why. Spanish is hard for me. I speak French and German, but the Spanish, I don't know. I'm trying my hardest.
Is it difficult to pick up more languages if you're already bilingual in several, or is it easier?
No, supposedly it's easier. I don't know what it is. I understand lots of Italian, but Spanish is very hard for me to tackle.
Now, if you're nominated for an Emmy for your performance for Best Lead Actress in a Drama Series, you'll have to submit an episode to Emmy judges for consideration. Do you know what episode from this first season you would consider your strongest performance?
Um, I don't know if they're my strongest performance, but I definitely like episode 6 and episode 12 the best as an ensemble. I'd say so. I'd probably would send those two just because I feel like that's really um, our show. 5, 6, and 12. I feel like were our strongest episodes.
Is there anything specific about your performance in those episodes or scenes that you're especially proud of that makes you gravitate towards those?
Well, episode 5 is sort of pivotal in the Marco-Sonia relationship. It's sort of the breakthrough for their friendship, and you are introduced to my sister's storyline, and so it's a very emotional scene for both Sonia and Marco, 5 and 6. And then 12 is sort of, we had a really great director, a female director called S.J. Clarkson, and she did an amazing job directing. And it's an episode where Marco's really unraveled and drinking heavily because of the death of his son. And there's a real sense of things changing and things that will never be the same. There's great dramatic scenes and great scenes between us as partners and now friends. So I don't know, I really just responded to those episodes.
Well, I want to wish you the best of luck on the bridge. You have the new season coming up this summer, and fingers crossed for potential Emmy nominations also this summer. It's been great chatting with you.
Thank you so much, and have a nice day.